Right now, as we speak, a Wall Street billionaire is fundamentally reshaping the Department of Defense's entire financial playbook. He's transforming it to act much more like a private equity firm. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to unpack this high-stakes pivot that is quite literally changing the very nature of national security. We've got a lot of ground to cover today, so here's how we'll break it down. 1. The Wall Street Pentagon. 2. The private equity playbook. 3. Real-world tech investments. 4. The Office of Strategic Capital. 5. Fixing a broken system. And finally, 6. The massive conflict of interest at the heart of it all.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the Wall Street Pentagon.
$4 billion. That is the estimated personal net worth of Deputy Secretary of Defense Steve Feinberg. You see, he's bringing a totally different, highly financial perspective to how the Pentagon runs day to day.
To put that in perspective, before he ever joined the government, Feinberg co-founded a private equity firm back in 1992 called Cerberus Capital Management. And that firm, it manages a staggering $70 billion in assets. We're talking about a massive, globally influential financial powerhouse here.
But here's the kicker. Feinberg actually brought 4 other Cerberus executives with him over to defense, and his new Pentagon team now commands a $200 billion lending power. I mean, just think about that. That is an enormous pool of taxpayer capital newly directed by Wall Street veterans.
Which brings us right to Section 2, the private equity playbook.
Contractors who are willing to change with us will prosper and grow. Those who don't and resist it will be gone. Wow. That stark ultimatum really captures the aggressive culture shock currently sweeping through the department. He's literally telling the defense industry that the old sluggish ways of doing business are completely over. It's a massive pivot from traditional government bureaucracy straight into cutthroat private sector efficiency.
Now, you might be thinking this is just your standard private equity strategy, but Cerberus isn't just dealing in commercial spaces like healthcare, grocery stores, or real estate. They hold vast assets strategically aligned with national security and defense contractors. They already understand this exact sector from the inside out, but crucially, as profit-driven investors.
So, what does this actually look like on the ground? Let's dive into Section 3, real-world tech investments.
Take the subsea fiber optic cable company, Subcom, for example. They do incredibly critical work for the DoD. Back in 2018, Cerberus bought it for around $350 million. Well, after restructuring, its current valuation sits at a staggering $2.3 billion. That is a massive, 6-fold jump in value. It's the private equity model working flawlessly.
And it's definitely not just cables. Look at ORAN Development, a company focused on open, cloud-based cellular networks. They were completely unheard of before Feinberg took office, but now they're building a 6G network in collaboration with the DoD, major telecoms, and NVIDIA. It's a strategic infrastructure play that could easily be worth billions.
All this unprecedented deal-making has to happen somewhere, right? Enter Section 4, the Office of Strategic Capital. While Cerberus itself was founded back in 1992, the Office of Strategic Capital, or the OSC, is a lot newer. It was initially set up by the Biden administration to align private capital with public national security goals. But with Feinberg's appointment, the OSC's budget and operational influence have been vastly expanded.
And here is the absolute key takeaway of this whole explainer. Historically, the traditional Department of Defense acted purely as a customer. They just bought goods and services. But under this new private equity influence, the DoD is stepping into the role of an investor. They are taking the historic, completely unprecedented step of buying actual equity stakes in private businesses, fundamentally rewriting the relationship between the government and the private sector. To pull this off, the OSC is totally bypassing standard red tape. Instead of slogging through traditional bureaucratic channels, they're relying heavily on personal networks, trusted insiders, and a much more informal style of deal-making. It's agile, it's incredibly fast, and quite frankly, it's straight off Wall Street.
Which forces us to ask, why? Why the drastic shift? That brings us to Section 5, fixing a broken system.
Supporters of this shift point directly to a pretty grim history. You see, the Pentagon is notoriously bureaucratic, highly inefficient, and, get this, has failed every single audit it has ever undergone. Let that sink in for a second. They quite literally cannot track every taxpayer dollar they spend. For a lot of people, that old model is just completely unsustainable. So insiders are arguing that this aggressive private equity deal-making expertise isn't just a luxury anymore, it's an absolute necessity. To successfully compete on the modern world stage, the US military has to be as financially agile and sophisticated as the tech companies actually developing its futuristic weapons.
But of course, a shift this massive doesn't happen without serious scrutiny. Let's look at Section 6, the conflict of interest.
The central ethical tension here really boils down to one punchy question: return on investment or national security. With a small team of former private equity executives managing $200 billion in lending capacity, critics are understandably asking, are they evaluating these deals solely for the strategic safety of the U.S., or are they looking at the financial upside?
Now, legally speaking, Feinberg met the letter of the law when he entered office by divesting his stakes in Cerberus to trusts for his adult children. However, critics point out a pretty glaring loophole here. Divestment doesn't magically erase your memory. He still knows exactly what Cerberus's vast holdings are, and he knows exactly how massive Pentagon decisions might impact those specific markets.
The divide on this is deep, and we have to look at it objectively. On one side, supporters see a patriot acting entirely out of duty, bringing invaluable, unpaid skills to fix a profoundly broken government system. But on the flip side, critics argue this setup places individuals with massive private sector ties way too close to trillion-dollar Pentagon decision-making, which deepens a massive, unchecked conflict of interest.
Ultimately, this leaves us with an unprecedented dilemma for taxpayers and the future of our national security. We really have to ask ourselves, is the immense reward of Wall Street efficiency actually worth the systemic risk of these ethical conflicts? It's a crucial question for the modern era of defense, and honestly, it's one that's going to define the Pentagon's playbook for years to come. What do you think?